All right, so that's sort of a brief overview of the differences between lists and arrays. Let's actually take a look at how we actually use arrays. So in Python, there's something called a module, which is called the Numpy module, and that's something you make use of by using the import statement. And what you can do is also include this keyword as, which is really useful for abbreviating the name of a module. So one specific example of that is the matplot library module, which is a really long name, and you'll often see statements like import matplotlib.pyplot, really long name, as plt, really short name. And we'll see an example of that a little bit later on. But this basically Numpy module allows us to use arrays, and Numpy module has a lot of functions contained within it. And this as part here, this as np, this basically sets it up so that every time the program sees np, and you'll see it's highlighted yellow, every time the program sees np, it knows we're talking about this Numpy module, and it knows that we're talking about something that's related to arrays, and that's how we utilize arrays in Python. Now, I want to go ahead and talk about how you can actually declare an empty array in Python. And that makes use of this np.zeros function. This will basically declare an empty array, which is really just an array that is filled with a bunch of zeros. And here we'll have, within this function, np.zeros, you actually give it a list, which might seem kind of ironic. You give a list to an array and you get an array back, but that's how the function works. So you give it this list, and it's very important that this is in fact a list, otherwise it may not work the way you want it to. So here I have a 10 in the first element of this list, and I have a 5 as the second element in this list. And what that will do is, and the order here is important, what that will do is I will create an empty array that is 10 rows. Again, that first number is the row number, and 5 columns. Again, that second number is in fact the column number. So let me go back to there we go. Okay, had a bit of a technical issue there. So let's go back to this and take a look at this a little bit closer. So here we have import numpy as np, and then we have my array is equal to np.zeros, 10 comma 5. So again, that's going to create an array that's 10 rows by 5 columns. So that'll give you something that looks like this. And again, I have the rows here highlighted in blue and the columns highlighted in green. But something to keep in mind is, again, the computer does not start counting at 1, it starts counting at 0. So really, this first row, quote unquote, what we would call the first row, the computer is going to refer to as row number 0. And this would be row number 1, row number 2, row number 3, all the way up to row number 9. If you count all these up, you will in fact see there are in fact 10 rows here. And then same idea with the columns. So again, it starts counting at 0. So it's going to be column number 0, column number 1, column number 2, column number 3, column number 4, and so on and so forth. Now, let's take a look at a statement that goes something like this. So let's say we want to start putting information into this empty array. We've got it set up. Now we want to start storing information into the array. So let's say I want to put something in this particular row and column. So row number 0, that would correspond to this row right here. Column number 0, again, row number, column number. Column number 0 would correspond to this column right here, and the intersection between those two would be this entry in the array. And remember how the equal sign works. It takes what's on the right-hand side and puts it in what's on the left-hand side. So this is going to take the number 20 and put it in row number 0, column number 0 of my array, which is the empty array that we declared. So that's going to put 20 in this particular entry right here. This corresponds to row number 0, column number 0. And if we want to, say, pick a different column, we have my array 0, 1 equals 10. So that's going to take row number 0, column number 1, which would be this entry, and it's going to set that particular entry in the array to 10. And another example, so let's say I want a different row. So this would be row number 1, corresponding to this row that I'm moving the cursor across, and then column number 0, which would correspond to this entry right here, and we're going to set that particular entry to 5. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of how exactly arrays work. Let me actually go into the program here and you can see what we actually have. And what I could do is, let me go ahead and print out what that array actually looks like so we can see. I'll actually do a before and after here. So this print statement at the top here, this is before I make the changes to the array. This is before I make changes to the array part 2. So again, we see we have 10 rows, 5 columns. And this is second print statement is going to be after I make these changes. So after what's run on lines 12 through 14 here. You can see this is what our array looks like after we make those changes, which does in fact correspond. Really does not like it when I do this. I did not have any issues when doing this before, but okay. So there you see it does resemble something like what we had here. And one other tidbit that I would like to go ahead and explore. So if you're using this setup, you can convert from list to arrays, which again is not going to be something you'll really need to know too much for the course of this project, but it might be useful to know for future reference. So if you have a list declared, so again, this is the same exact list that we had in the previous segment, you can convert that to an array by doing something like this. So you would type np.array, parentheses, and then the name of the list that you want converted to an array. And again, make sure you have this statement included in order for that to work. And if you leave out the as part, then you would replace the np with numpy, or numpy. Some people pronounce it numpy as well. I prefer numpy. And then if you want to convert from an array to a list, then you just simply just type out list, the name of the array that you want converted to a list, and then the resulting list will go into whatever's on the left-hand side. So that's a look at arrays and how they compare with lists. And that's going to do it for this segment. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about something called nested for loops, which is something that you'll need to know if you're going to analyze any sort of multidimensional data set, including the data set that you'll have to analyze for the course of this project. So with that, I will see you all in the next segment.